Okay, so this is just a follow-up to what we were talking about earlier. We're going to look at how to create and modify the post. So what we've been using was just kind of those factory posts that are in there, and those are fine to use. There's not a single thing wrong with those. So here we have just the same 1, 2, 3 block that we had done before. We can go to post process. We've got a lot of just pretty decent posts to use in here. So we go into the Haas section. You can go anywhere from up here to Haas. This will show you all of them that are in there. You can come in, click off of that. You can go into just the milling Haas and sort through those. So for anything from here, just a real super generic. I've labeled this one 1002, and I just gave a little program comment of creating and modifying posts. So you could post out this one and call it 1002. And it's going to be a pretty good post. And it comes through here and gives you all the information that you need. Some of these things can be modified, some of them can't. But as we go through and we can see kind of some of the things that we like and some of the things that we don't like in here. Like I personally don't like the extra tool in here. I don't like how it has this standby tool in here. And I normally am only going to put line numbers when I do a tool change. So the rest of my lines won't be numbered. So what I want to do is I want to go in and modify this post. And so I can do that, and I can customize it however I want. So I like that post, and that's just the Haas generic one, so I can go back to post processors, and so I got Haas generic up there. I can go open configuration on this, and I can go ahead and it basically has a bunch of variables where you can go in here and make some choices as to what you're going to do. And so I can go in here, and some of these are already labeled. So however much stuff I want to be on there, I can use. And so here I can play around with some of these things. As long as you rename it something different, you're not going to ruin it. So there's nothing wrong with changing some of these things. So I go to line 46 here. Preload tool. I don't want to preload the tool. That's when we have a secondary tool in the position for our machine. On our machines that we're using here in the shop, we don't have that. So I go to 46, and I can just replace true with false. So I can take care of that off of it. And then I can go down, I can just kind of walk down through these. Turn on chip conveyor if I want to. If I've got the chip conveyor, then I can. Show sequence numbers, show first sequence number, increment for sequence number. I can change that if I wanted to do sequence numbers all the way through. Sequence number only on tool changes. That's what I want. So I'm going to go in there and type true on it. Okay, so those are two things that I really like, where I can just not have my standby tool on there, and I can only show sequence numbers on the tool changes. Now, another thing that I don't like to use very often is how sometimes on the HSM it'll actually want to use a fast feed rate instead of a rapid. And so I want to do this allow G0 when moving along more than one axis. It's currently saying false on that. If I want to change that to true, I can. Also can just right below that specifies that G28 should be used instead of G53. So each one of these is just kind of asking you questions, and you're able to go in and change some of those things on there. And so if I wanted to use the G0, I can hit true on that. If you're unsure of what some of them are, don't be afraid to play with it just a little bit. Just remember what you have. What I usually do is I've got a piece of paper. I just write them down as I go. I want to change 46. I want to change 51. And I've played around with some of these others on a couple of different posts that I've been messing around with. So sometimes I have tool break detection. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have home position, and sometimes I don't. So it just kind of depends on what it is that I want to use. There's a ton of options. You can really customize a lot of different things on there. I go all the way up to the very top and look at how I want my post to start out. So if I like this, and so we can just mess around with this, and I can just say save as Haas post. I'm just going to call this Haas post modified JW. And I'm going to call it today. So it's saved, and now I can close it out. And now when I come back to my window list, I should be able to find that thing in there. Sometimes I have to go out and then come back into it just to figure out exactly where it is. Here's one that I modified from before, and it's just it's a real similar one. So I go and do 2000 or 1002. This is one that I already changed so that only the line number changes with the tool change, that it no longer has a secondary tool in there. But this configuration was made with the B and C axis rotation. So that one I didn't really mess around with that much. So I come back in here. Here's my Haas post modified today, and still going to do 1002. Just keep overwriting that. That's just an extra post that we have. So I go to the very beginning. It's called creating a modifying post. That's what I told it. Using G0, which travels along the dog leg path. That's going to be going along the X and Y path. That's just telling me that it's not going to travel at that fast feed rate that we often see. So I do have the G53 going to G0, Z0, or yeah, rapid to Z0, and that's just going to move my spindle up. Notice I've got M10, T1, M6, G54. I've got no longer do I have that standby tool stuck in there. All of my other stuff is going real well. I like it. Now, if I want to go in and change that, because there is something I don't like about it. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to open the configuration. And as I go into 51, as I look at 50, I want to change how my lines start. I want to start, I'm going up to 49, I'm going to start at 100. And I want my tool changes to go every 100 in incrementation. So now, I just save it, close it, and then I can go in. Sometimes I'll go away from it and then come back in and open it back up. That way I know all my changes are saved. So go back and I find that Haas modified today. Save it as 1002. Remember, this is just one that we're playing around with. So now I start with 100 for my first tool, 200 for a second tool. The really great thing about this is if you can keep everything kind of jiving like that, tool 4 N400 is your tool 4 if you can go in that order. Now, if you don't go in that order and it's, say, 5, 7, 12, 19, 3, it still is your same operation. It's still your first operation at 100, your second operation at 200, your third operation at 300, so on and so forth all the way through. So now on this one, I can just keep on going through all of them. If it's using cutter compensation, it's going to still use cutter compensation just like it's supposed to. Everything's going to stay along with it. So here's what I want you to do. This is just a really quick video on this. And what I want you to do during our time through this, and before we meet again, I want you to play around with creating and editing, creating and modifying posts. So I'm going to upload this into right after Module 2. But what I want you to try to work on is how can you eliminate some of these spaces that go through here, Because there's even a space after the M30 before the percent sign, which to me is super annoying. And then how can you also maybe do a little bit of customizing yourself? So I want you to try a couple of things on there. And however you do that is totally up to you. You can limit the amount of spaces that you use because the Haas will allow you to use 5 characters, where some of the older FANUC controls only allow you to have the O and then 4 characters afterwards. Maybe you could put in some extra comments. Maybe you can just put in some things that you would use on a machine that you might use wherever you work. Also, you can change just some of the customizing and the laying out of things. Remember, if you save it as a new name, you can always go back and do that. So I'm going to give you the option to, I want you to play with this post and create one, and I'm going to give you a submission box just like for Module 1 and Module 2 that you can do some modifying. I want you to make it just like mine and then to modify it yourself to remove some of those spaces and then do something else to modify it. And then as you submit that in the comments, I want you to put, I changed my post to add in, subtract, change, modify, do whatever. So that's what I'd like you guys to work on for the next time that we meet.